Hello and welcome to episode 4 of our very first season. I want to thank all the fans we gathered so far. We love scary movies here, and I want to thank you all for listening in. We got some really good ones today. So sit back, relax, and be ready to be scared. The Whispering Hallways. In the quiet town of Millbrook, the old Lincoln High School had long been abandoned, its halls echoing with stories of the past, where rumors persisted that, decades ago, a student named Daniel Harper vanished without a trace during his senior year. Some said he was bullied, others whispered he was hiding something sinister. One stormy night, a group of teenagers, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Sam, decided to explore the deserted school, eager for an adrenaline rush. As they stepped inside, the air grew thick with dust and the scent of mold. Their flashlights flickered, casting ominous shadows on the cracked walls. They wandered through the dark corridors, laughing nervously, until they reached the old auditorium. Suddenly, Emma's flashlight flickered and died. In the silence, they heard faint whispers, indistinct but unmistakably human. Heart pounding, they tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. A cold breeze swept through the hall, and the whispers grew louder. Then a figure appeared, a tall, gaunt man in a tattered school uniform, eyes hollow and staring directly at them. It was Daniel Harper. "Why did you come back?" his voice rasped, echoing through the empty halls. "You shouldn't be here." Panic set in as Daniel's face twisted into a sinister grin. Shadows seemed to crawl from the walls, reaching out like claws. The whispers turned into screams, filling their minds with terror. One by one, the teenagers vanished into the darkness, their screams silenced. When the police arrived the next morning, the school was silent once more. Emma's phone was found outside, ringing faintly with her last desperate message. "Help me. He's here." To this day, Lincoln High remains abandoned, and students swear they hear whispers and see a shadowy figure lurking in the windows at night, waiting for the next curious souls to enter and never leave. The Shadow in the Pines. It started with whispers. Stories passed around campfires about a mysterious creature lurking deep within the forests of the Pacific Northwest. Most dismissed them as tall tales, legends spun to entertain or scare away curious outsiders. But for those who lived near the woods, there was an unshakable sense that something unseen watched from the shadows. Jake and Emily had always been avid hikers and explorers. When they heard about the remote area known as Blackwood Forest, an ancient, dense woodland with a reputation for strange occurrences, they couldn't resist. They decided to spend a weekend camping there, eager for adventure. On their first night, the woods seemed alive with sounds. The distant hoot of an owl, the rustling of leaves, and an occasional snap of a twig underfoot kept them alert. As darkness settled in, the trees seemed to close in around their campsite, shadows stretching like dark fingers. Around midnight, Emily was awakened by a faint, guttural growl, deep and resonant, unlike any animal they knew. She nudged Jake, who was already awake, staring into the darkness beyond their firelight. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded silently, eyes scanning the tree line. Suddenly, a massive figure moved between the trees, a towering silhouette, hulking and covered in dark, matted fur. It paused, seemingly watching them, then moved away with a slow, deliberate gait. They sat frozen, hearts pounding, unsure if what they saw was real. but the creature's massive, lumbering form was unmistakable. As dawn approached, they dared to look outside their tent. Tracks, huge barefoot prints, led from their campsite into the woods, disappearing into the underbrush. Over the next few days, strange things happened. They found broken branches and flattened bushes around their site. Even more massive footprints. Once, Emily swore she saw a pair of glowing eyes watching her from the darkness, just beyond the firelight. On the third night, things took a darker turn. They heard guttural screams echoing through the trees, sounds that seemed almost human but twisted and guttural. Jake decided to investigate, grabbing his flashlight and stepping into the woods alone. Emily begged him not to go, but he insisted he needed to see what was causing the noise. Minutes later, he returned pale and shaken. He told her he saw the creature, massive, covered in shadow, with eyes that glowed like embers. It was standing over what looked like a pile of bones, hunched and snarling. That night, the presence felt oppressive. The forest seemed to breathe and pulse with an unseen menace. Around midnight, Emily awoke to a strange, low growl right outside their tent. She looked out and saw the silhouette of the creature, larger than any bear, peering in at them. Its eyes reflected the faint moonlight, burning with an unnatural intelligence. Terrified, they packed up and left at first light, but the woods seemed to cling to them. They noticed that no matter how far they traveled, the feeling of being watched persisted. Their nights were plagued with nightmares, visions of glowing eyes and the creature's shadowy form stalking behind trees. Years later, Jake and Emily tried to dismiss it as paranoia or an overactive imagination. But whenever they returned to Blackwood Forest, the stories always resurfaced, and the memories haunted them. Some say the creature is Bigfoot, a guardian of the forest, or perhaps a cursed being, misunderstood and feared. Others believe it's something darker, an ancient predator that predates humanity, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next foolish explorers to stumble into its domain. And if you ever find yourself lost in those woods, listen carefully. If you hear a deep growl or see glowing eyes watching you from the darkness, remember, some shadows are best left undisturbed. Beware the woods and never underestimate what lurks in the shadows. The whispering shadows in the small, forgotten town of Ravensbrook, nestled between dense woods and misty hills, there was an old abandoned mansion known locally as Blackwood Manor. Once a grand estate, it had fallen into ruin over the decades, its windows shattered, walls covered in peeling paint and creeping vines. The townspeople whispered about it in hushed tones, claiming it was cursed, haunted by the shadows of those who had vanished within its walls. One chilly autumn evening, a group of 4 friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Marcus, decided to explore the manor, eager for an adrenaline rush. Ignoring the warnings, they approached as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, sinister shadows that seemed to crawl and stretch toward them. As they pushed open the creaking gate, a cold gust of wind swept past, carrying with it a faint whispering chorus that seemed to call their names. Stepping inside, their flashlights flickered, casting wavering beams across dusty furniture and torn curtains. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay. They moved cautiously through the grand foyer, where a massive chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. Suddenly, a soft whisper echoed through the hall. Leave, before it's too late. They froze, exchanging nervous glances, but pressed on. In the parlour, they found a large, dusty mirror, covered in a tattered cloth. Marcus, curious, pulled the cloth away, revealing a tarnished glass surface. As he looked into it, his reflection flickered and warped, and for a brief moment, he saw a shadowy figure standing behind him. Tall, faceless, with glowing red eyes. Startled, he spun around, but nothing was there. The others laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood. Emma suggested they check out the basement, where strange noises had been heard before. As they descended the creaking stairs, the temperature dropped further, and their breath became visible in the icy air. In the basement, they discovered old, rotting crates and a strange, circular symbol drawn in what looked like dried blood on the floor. Suddenly, the symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural light. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, now sounding like desperate pleas. Help us. Free us. Panic set in. Lily wanted to leave, but as they turned to go, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The lights flickered wildly, and shadows began to ripple along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. From the darkness, ghostly figures emerged, pale apparitions with hollow eyes and mouths frozen in silent screams. One of the shadows, the largest and most terrifying, approached Marcus. Its form was shifting, like smoke caught in a breeze, whispering in a voice that sounded like 1,000 lost souls. You've awakened us. Now you belong to the shadows forever. Emma screamed as the shadows coalesced around them, their cold touch seeping into their bones, draining their warmth and life. The last thing they saw was the mirror in the parlour shattering into pieces, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness where their reflections once stood. When the townspeople came the next morning, they found Blackwood Manor eerily silent. The friends were gone without a trace, their belongings untouched, except for a faint, lingering whisper carried on the wind. Stay, forever. From that day on, no one dared enter Ravensbrook's haunted mansion. And on cold, fog-laden nights, some say you can still hear the whispers drifting from the shadows, calling, beckoning, forever hungry for new souls to join their eternal prison. The night of the killer clowns. It all started one cold October evening in the small town of Ravensbrook. The annual Halloween festival was in full swing. Children darted from haunted houses to pumpkin patches, and neighbors decorated their homes with cobwebs, skeletons, and flickering lights. But beneath the festive glow, something sinister was lurking. It began with whispers. Rumors spread about a mysterious clown sighting near the outskirts of town. At first, people dismissed it as a prank, kids in masks, or perhaps an overactive imagination. But as the night deepened, reports grew more disturbing. People started disappearing. It was Sarah, a brave teenager, who decided to investigate the rumors. She had heard about strange, shadowy figures near the abandoned carnival grounds on the edge of town. Armed with her flashlight and a camera, she snuck out of her house just after midnight. As she approached the dilapidated entrance, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air was thick with an unnatural silence, broken only by distant, echoing laughter, high-pitched, manic, and mocking. She hesitated but pressed on. Inside, the carnival was a ghostly tableau. Rides rusted and creaking, tents torn and tattered, and a faint glow emanating from the center of the grounds. Then she saw them, clowns. But these weren't ordinary clowns. They had twisted, grotesque faces painted in bright colors, eyes that gleamed with malevolence, and bodies that seemed unnaturally elongated. Their smiles stretched impossibly wide, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. Sarah froze as one of the clowns turned toward her. Its eyes burned with a sinister intelligence. The others followed, closing in like a pack of predators. She turned to run, but the ground beneath her suddenly shifted. The clowns advanced, their laughter echoing through the empty night. She managed to escape, stumbling back into town, breath ragged and heart-pounding. But she wasn't safe. Over the next few days, more townspeople vanished. Some found wandering the outskirts, their faces frozen in terror. Others never seen again. The local sheriff, Mr. Carter, tried to dismiss the incidents as Halloween pranks, but the evidence was mounting. Strange footprints led from the outskirts into town. Big, clown-shaped prints that seemed to multiply in the dirt. Witnesses reported seeing shadowy figures lurking near their homes, always just out of reach, always watching. Then, the night came when the terror reached its peak. It was Halloween night, and the town was alive with celebrations. But behind the scenes, something dark was awakening. The killer clowns had come to claim their victims, drawn by the chaos, the fear, and perhaps the thrill of the hunt. One by one, the residents fell prey to the clown troupe. Some were lured into tents filled with mirrors that warped their reflections, trapping them in a nightmare world. Others were chased down alleyways, their screams swallowed by the darkness. The town's lights flickered and went out, plunging Ravensbrook into an abyss of shadows. In the chaos, a group of survivors, Sarah among them, found refuge in the old town hall. They barricaded the doors and windows, trembling as the clown laughter seeped through the cracks. Outside, the clowns danced and taunted, their grotesque faces illuminated by flickering lanterns. As dawn approached, the clowns seemed to retreat, melting into the shadows like nightmares fading with the morning light. The survivors emerged, battered and scarred, but alive. The town was silent, haunted by the memory of that terrible night. But the horror was not over. Rumors persist that some of the killer clowns escaped into the woods, waiting patiently for their next hunt. Local legend whispers that on foggy nights, you can still hear their distant, chilling laughter echoing through the trees. And if you ever find yourself near Ravensbrook on Halloween, beware. Keep your lights on, stay inside, and never, ever follow a clown smile, because you might just become their next victim. Remember, some nightmares are better left in the dark.